Want to know how top chefs design beautiful plates of food? Well, we're chatting with head chef Scott Smith from the amazing Oarsman in Marlow to find out. In this episode, we'll uncover his background, learn where he honed his expert plating techniques, and discover the challenges of making even the most unconventional dishes look visually stunning, including his favourite, Trotters on toast. Now the mind boggles, so stick around to see what that looks like. And if you want to watch some of Scott's plating demo, then I'll link to that video at the end of this one. So no more mucking around, let's dive straight into the Food Envy podcast with Scott Smith. Maybe just as a brief outline, you can give us a quick 60 seconds on sort of your career and a little bit about your food style.
Yeah, so I come from a little town in Scotland called Oban. So I started cooking there straight, fresh out of school as a kitchen porter. I started cooking in a small hotel. Done a few years there and then moved to Glasgow to work under Chris Lambis at Kilbruick. And then when I was there, my whole time in Glasgow, I was working at Kilbruick, and then I moved to London. I spent time in London working briefly under Jason Atherton. Then I worked for years under Anthony Demetre, and then I moved to work for Bryn Williams at Debts in Primrose Hill. And then I took my first head chef's job back up in Scotland, a place called the Sugar Boat. And then I got the opportunity to come down and open the Oarsman's.
And what experiences did you get from those different places that sort of, clearly cooking, that's the main impact that I'm sure working in these amazing places had, but visually, was there one that really kind of stood out for, this is the style that I want to be known for, this is the style I enjoy?
I mean, my two biggest influences, I would say, are Anthony and Chef Bryn. Those are the two guys that I started to really learn from and pick up my style, I suppose. So I'd say our style sort of somewhere between Anthony's and Bryn's, where it's all very sort of clean, classic, nothing too fancy on the plate. But Bryn sort of taught me that the beauty is in the simplicity of food.
And I guess really good ingredients, perfectly cooked, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony was, he just got the best ingredients and treated them with the utmost respect. That was Anthony's style to a T. Just beautiful ingredients treated properly. It makes your job so much easier.
Well, I guess when you're so busy in the kitchen, that's good. And actually adding too many tricks, too many twists, it gets old quite quickly as it dates.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Clean ingredients. I mean, that's certainly, I think we were talking just slightly off camera about how that's now more in vogue, isn't it? I think, compared to the tips and the tricks. And
yes, it's just all about the quality of what you're eating as opposed to sort of what you can do with it.
Yeah. So now you're head chef here, when you're conceptualizing and creating dishes, because you change your menu quite a lot, don't you?
Yeah.
How do you start? I'm constantly fascinated by, like writers when they got a blank page in front of them, or a painter when they're looking at this blank canvas. You've clearly got your plate effectively. How do you start? What's your kicking off point?
You start with the seasons. We're guided by the seasons. So our nature tells us what we should and shouldn't be doing at certain times of the year. You just look at what's in season, what local producers have, and we just go from there. And we also try to make it so that everyone in the kitchen are like to have a bit of input into the menu. So if someone wants to try something, then we'll work with that, and we just sort of build it like that together.
Okay. So that's probably more, I guess, on how you generate the recipe, but when you're coming to actual plating it, do you have a jumping off point? So I've spoken to other chefs and he said, immediately the first thing I do is I go to the center of the plate and I build from there. Do you sketch anything out? Do you have an idea of what you're doing beforehand? Because I know some chefs have the luxury of time, budget to think and really conceptualize. I'm assuming in a venue like this, there's not so much time, I would imagine. So how do you, is it feel?
We'll get our ingredients together and then we'll take it to the plate and we'll just do what feels natural.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There's been times where I've sort of sketched things out and I've had an idea of what to do, but at the end of the day, until you've got all your ingredients down and you've got your empty plate in front of you, that's when you know how to dress things, just how you're feeling.
In terms of things like texture and colour and things like that, so that's generally will just happen and evolve then. So you don't think if you've got some like red beetroot or something that's hugely in season, that's the jumping off point.
In terms of sort of colour and texture and things, these things are their natural progression. So the amount of times you'll do a dish, you play with it, not happy with it, we'll go away and tweak it. All these things just sort of flow and happen naturally.
So I hope you've enjoyed diving into the world of professional plating and that you found his insights into the visual world of plating as eye-opening and inspirational as I did. Then it would be amazing if you could give this video a comment, a like, or even subscribe to the channel. Now your ideas and questions matter. So if you've got a secret plating tip you'd like to share or a burning question for our next chef, drop them in the comments below and I'll see what I can do next time. So who knows, maybe it'll be your curiosity that sparks the next brilliant conversation with one of our chefs. Now let's dive in back to the video. And how long have you been sort of professional chef for, roughly?
Well, it's 16 years now, I think.
Years.
Yeah.
So how much have you seen the importance of the visual side of the plate change? Have you seen a massive? Because clearly, it's one of those things that has always been important because we eat with our eyes, but because of the Instagram generation and stuff like that, and having to make your food look visually appealing, how much have you seen that sort of creep into the importance creep into what you do here?
It's very important. We try to focus on the taste sort of more than the look. It does have to look appealing, especially now with social media. People expect food to be pretty and beautiful and almost like you don't want to eat it. Yeah, it's changed a lot from when I started. When I started as well, we always say that Scotland's maybe 5 years behind London.
Okay.
And where I came from in Scotland was 5 years behind the rest of Scotland. So when I started cooking, it was very much sort of like classic 80s Novu, where everything was stacked, super classic. So I've seen a lot of changes throughout my career.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of social media has probably sped that up, hasn't it? Really, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And certainly, when people plate stuff specific for Instagram and stuff, it's one of those things you can tell. I completely appreciate you still need the dish to work, but it's just interesting to find out how much more the visual is important / essential. If you do want to have a good social media, which, let's face it, all places probably do.
The past few years is the first time ever you're able to see influences from around the world had a real impact on the way everyone around the world sort of cooks and dresses.
Is there a British style to plating? Or is it because everyone in different kitchens has different nationalities, don't they? Really, you don't just get English guys or Scots guys in this country. You get them from all over the place. So is there a French style to plating? Is there a South American style to plating, or is it all pretty much good plating is good plating?
Yeah, I think good plate is good plating. I'm sure that there was a time when you could maybe differentiate between different cuisines and how things are dressed, but I think everything's just sort of emulsified into one sort of big universal way of plating now. And
I'd say that's probably about right. Will you ever sacrifice taste for visuals, just to add something that maybe just visually looks good? It's one of those things that I know, asking a chef, I think I know what the answer's going to be, but it's just, as a home cook, I will add stuff just because it looks a bit nicer. So I'm just wondering, are there times where you think, I will add this just because it, that extra little pop of colour does really help?
I mean, not really. When you want to add colour, that's sort of the old school in me is saying that's what herbs are for. In terms of just adding something for the sake of it, not really, no.
Okay. I think I'll stop asking that question. That seems to be, and probably quite the right answer, isn't it, really? Because that's what you guys are all about. Me, I would do, because my side of this industry is more the visual side, and some of the hardest food to photograph is some of the tastiest already, but it just doesn't look good. Things like curry and stuff like that takes real skill to make that look appetizing.
I mean, haggis, neeps and tatties. It's not a pretty dish, but it's one of the best going, I think.
Well, if you ever find a good picture of that, let me know.
Yeah.
Do you try and, because obviously you're a proud Scotsman, do you try and get that clearly into your cooking, but into the visual side of it at all?
It's difficult with Scottish cooking because Scottish food's mostly stodge.
Yeah.
Which is incredible, but again, it doesn't look the prettiest. But some amazing Scottish chefs out there that are really sort of pushing the boundaries and doing things that I would never even think of.
Yeah.
Like guys like Tom Kitchen. He's just, you look at his food and it's so like quintessentially Scottish.
Yeah.
But it's just so beautiful.
So clearly plating for chefs is different to plating at home. Do you have any good tips for the home cook, such as myself, of how to plate? Because whenever I see in kitchens, it's almost military style. You've got everything prepped and things like that. Are there any good tips you can think of that might help the home cook at all?
It's hard to say to give someone a tip, because everyone's different, and essentially cooking's an art form. And everyone's different, so what is beautiful for one person doesn't quite hit the same for someone else. But I mean, the one thing I always say is just we try and keep it tight and nice and together, and not have too much sort of negative space, I suppose you say.
Okay.
The one thing I always find myself trying to explain to guys in the kitchen is, if you're piping something, and instead of sort of, if you've got a piping bag or a bottle, instead of sort of pulling it up, I tend to say to the guys, you hold it at the point you want your dot to finish, and then just let it go naturally, and it'll fall over itself, and it'll be perfect.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are sort of piping purees at home and stuff. So
Yeah, piping's not one I do a great deal of, to be honest. When we were chatting over messages and stuff, you mentioned one of your favourite places to go is St John's in London and the chef Fergus Henderson.
Yeah.
And again, looking up him, he's very much a nose to tail kind of guy, which again, I imagine when you're talking about offal and things like that, that's a lot harder to then style as well.
Yeah.
Is that something that you do a lot of here, and is that a struggle?
We do try and use as much sort of offal and cheaper cuts as you can, although there is sort of no such thing as a cheap cut anymore, really. Yeah, offal does take a lot more work to sort of make look pretty, but I mean, one of our sort of signature dishes here is Trotters on toast.
Really?
Yeah, which is a nod to sort of Fergus.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's simple. It's one thing on a plate. It's bread that's been fried in beef dripping, and then trotters and bacon that's brought back in a sort of really rich pork sauce, and finished with lots of white pepper.
Yeah.
So it's got the taste of haggis to it.
Okay.
It's one thing on a plate, toast and a sort of mound of like braised trotters, but I think it looks stunning.
That is kind of blowing my mind right now, just because of the name of it as well.
Yeah.
Is that what you call it? Is that what you call it?
Trotters on toast. Yeah.
Is that quite a good seller for you? Because I imagine that's quite a tough sell, I would think.
No, it does. It sells well, yeah. It sells well. And people are never quite sure what they're going to get.
I can imagine.
But when it gets put down, like I said, it's something so simple. But for me, it's just beautiful. And the simplicity of it tastes quite nice as well, yeah.
In terms of visually for that then, was that quite a struggle? And how did you kind of overcome it?
It wasn't a struggle. I had an idea of what we wanted to do.
Right.
We'd done it. And I sat back and I thought, that looks all right to be fair.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That looks nice, and it's just sort of, because they're so gelatinous, it sort of just holds, but it's got a little bit of a wobble to it, and it's just lovely.
You're gonna have to send me a picture.
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Is that one, because it is such a mystery dish? Do you kind of see people taking a little picture of it and stuff? Because it probably doesn't, in your mind's eye. So as soon as you said that, in my mind's eye, I'm thinking like a hoof on toast.
Yeah,
and I imagine it's nothing.
That's what people expect.
So that for me would be one of those ones, because I don't tend to do it in restaurants. Take pictures of my food, but yeah, I possibly would do that, just because it probably completely changes your mind about what you're going to get.
I mean, we've seen some people take photos of it. Well, not long after we opened, we had a visit from a Michelin inspector, and they put a photo of it up on Twitter, and it got absolutely slated.
Right, okay.
When people eat it, they enjoy it. They enjoy it, and I know you sort of eat with your eyes, and it's maybe not the most visually appealing to some people, but it is what it is, and everything's subjective. I think it's beautiful. Some people think it's boring.
That's absolutely true. I mean, with any art form, subjectivity is always the most important thing. As a photographer, I see it all the time. And to be honest with you, some things that win awards, you think, how on earth has that done it? And it's one of those things that is just throw it. Speaking of awards, that's a good segue to my next question, because I saw that you guys recently won the newcomer award for the top 50 gastropubs.
Yeah.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
And also the National Pub and Bar Awards Buckinghamshire. Yeah. Which is all fantastic. How important do you think the visuals was in winning competitions?
I don't really know. Like these, like winning things like this are a surprise to us.
Yeah.
I mean, these things, they want to be able to sell your product without people knowing how it tastes. So I suppose visually, it is very important. And we do always try and keep things neat and clean and tidy. But yeah, I'm sure when guys come and visit us, they'll look at how the dish looks first before they taste it.
I would think so. I imagine it's hugely unlikely that places that don't take that time and effort to visually present their foods are really going to, even if it tastes the best.
Yeah,
it probably, in sort of awards, I would imagine it's going to be very hard to sell. Wow, thank you so much for sticking with this video all the way through. And I hope you've got some really good insights. Are there any thoughts, suggestions that you'd like to make to improve it for the next one? Do you know what? I'm really excited to create more content like this. So any feedback or suggestions on future content would be really, really gratefully received. So let's keep the conversation going and improve together. Thank you so much for being part of this food-loving community. So come on, grab a fork and get involved.